I watch and the clock on the wall. It is 3 o'clock. Time to call to order the Board of Directors regular meeting study session for Thursday, March 16th, 2023. Could I have a roll call, please?
Director Meyerhoffen.
Present.
Director Duff.
Present.
Director Griffith. Vice President Sewell.
Here.
President Martin.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
And Director Griffith said that he's having difficulty accessing remotely, so he may join at some point during the meeting. Okay, announcement and verification of remote meeting participation pursuant to AB 2449 or GC 549-53 subsection B. Pardon? Aye. Okay.
His remote
Okay.
access, yes.
Okay. Moving on to rules of procedure, Counselor. Okay. Item 6, public input. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on matters within the board's jurisdiction. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. State law prohibits the board from discussing or taking action on any item not listed on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address the board?
President Martin, we do not.
Okay. Human Resources Report, item 7.
Okay, but one thing that I did want to do up front is you will notice that the item 18 agenda staff report is not there. And we left it at your desk. We will post this and send it out tomorrow for the meeting on Monday. It's basically, you know, the general staff report. It was just sort of an oversight when we put the packet together. Okay.
So we'll discuss that on Monday, not today.
Discuss that on Monday along with the human resources report.
On Monday,
On Monday.
not today. Okay. All right. Item 8, resolution 2023-04, a resolution of the Board of Directors of Mission Springs Water District rescinding COVID-19 local emergency. It's recommended that the board adopt resolution 2023-04, rescinding the board's COVID-19 emergency resolution number 2020-07. Arden?
Well, I'm going to let John handle that. It's been 3 years since we've been doing the COVID meetings, and it'll change where these meetings are going to look differently post COVID. And so I'll let John elaborate.
Obtain supplies, equipment, and services needed for protection of life and property. It also directed district departments to track costs related to COVID preparations and prevention. The COVID-19 pandemic, as we all know, has now reached a controlled status. The state of California emergency declaration due to COVID ended on February 28th. The president of the United States has indicated that the national emergency declarations and public healthcare emergency declarations will end on May 11th. And so at this time, we feel that we no longer need the emergency declaration to be in place. And so it's recommended that the board approve resolution 2023-04, which is in your packet, which will have the effect of rescinding the district's COVID-19 emergency resolution number 2020-07.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Amber?
I'm not sure if this is 100% related, but do we need to, as a board, take action to move forward with hybrid meetings as we move into public attendance so that we can maintain the ability to reach as many of our community as possible?
So the board, currently you are allowing people to attend remotely, and your agenda, I believe, allows people to just join through Zoom. And I assume that's going to continue.
That's what I was referring to when I said post-pandemic, we are going to allow people to participate virtually, if they need to. And I guess I'm not even sure that we cannot do that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think it provides transparency. It allows people that can't physically make it down to the meeting to attend and watch. In addition to that, you have the ability under AB 2449 and the government code to allow people that have emergencies, and we've talked about this before, or if they have just cause, to attend remotely. So if a board member has a family medical emergency and they can't make it, but they want to attend remotely, there's a procedure for doing that. And if they fall under the definition of just cause, if that's why they're absent, then they can do that twice a year. So, and that framework is already provided for under the law. It's available.
Thank you so much.
And then lastly, just as a reminder, if somebody can't make it, they're on vacation or something, and they don't fit the definition of just cause or an emergency, they can still attend remotely as long as we follow the old procedures under the Brown Act, which is you let the clerk know ahead of time that you're going to be attending remotely because you have to be out of town. And the clerk will then have to post the address that you're attending from, and that'll be in the agenda. And then your agenda will have to be posted where you're attending from. So that process is still.
Yeah, item 2 was even part of evolved from those regulations. I admit I'm not an expert with those right now, but I'm sure we will be after 6 months or so. Okay.
Ted, you have any questions, comments?
Yes, I do have a question. If the directors outside of outside of California, in another state, or say in another city somewhere, are they still able to do it remotely?
Yes. they can
Twice a
still
year.
attend remotely.
Right.
I see you. Okay, I thought so. Thank you.
But still required the posting of the location and
Yes,
allowing
depending.
access to any members of the public that followed you into Florida or something like that.
Yes, just depending on the way that you're attending the meeting, whether you're doing it under the emergency, because if you do it under an emergency, then it's not going to be in the agenda, the location you're attending from, and it's not going to be posted, and you don't have to allow the public to attend, and irrespective of where you are. So if you have a family emergency in Ohio or New York, and you have to be there and you're attending through an emergency under the emergency rules, you have to notify the board as soon as possible. You don't have to give them all the details, but just give them an idea of, I've got a family member with this medical emergency. I've got to be here. And if you fit within the definition of an emergency, then the board has to take action to approve it. And you wouldn't have to post. So.
Okay, thank you.
Ivan? And I have nothing. Thank you, Counselor. Okay, item 9, resolution 2023-05, amending resolution 2022-32, revisions to Mission Springs Water District personnel rules and regulations. It's recommended to adopt resolution 2023-05, providing for the revisions to Mission Springs Water District personnel rules and regulations. Just want to point out that even though we're doing this, that the rules and regulations and the enforcement are the responsibility of the management staff of yourself and not part of the board's responsibilities. We have one employee and I'm looking at him right now.
Well, that's the way, and I think to build on that, that's the way the water code handles county water districts. It's not the same for others, in case you hear that that's not the same for cities and local agencies and cemetery districts, et cetera.
Right.
But that's okay. Yeah, we're gonna work on that. In the meantime, I hope you don't mind that I bring these things to you. And
No,
even if I did, I'm probably going to, if it's something that a law that we need to follow and I don't have any choice, I'll make the changes and send it to you. But I don't want to do it until I've got your blessing and I move forward very carefully. Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
This one particular, we are constantly amending. I think you're getting a better picture of how we are constantly monitoring the state and federal regulations in every area, from finance to human resources. Here, I think this is the third time in less than 6 months, that we've had changes to our personnel rules. Today, you will see that these are all very minor changes, mainly clarification. And we wanted to be consistent with how other agencies are applying these rules and regulations. Oriana will give you a summary and we'll be available for questions today. And we also have V here today. So with that, I'll let you take it from there, Oriana.
Thank you so much, General Manager Wallen. Good afternoon, President Martin and members of the board. Today, we bring to you another revision to the employee handbook. 2 revisions focus on when the last paycheck will be issued to the employee. 3 revisions focus on hours of work and overtime. And 3 revisions are just to further clarify policy. Those revisions are indicated in Exhibit A of your packet. They are in red. I do want to make a minor change to the language on Rule 22B1. That's at the bottom of Exhibit A, the first page. It currently reads, drive time during regularly scheduled workdays will not be compensated. Language will be updated to commute time during regularly scheduled workdays will not be compensated. This change will be in the packet that Dory will be sending you over tomorrow. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board, Amber?
Martin, I appreciate the opportunity to ask a couple questions. Thank you so much for bringing this to us. It helps me get a better idea as a new board member how you are operating and how your employees are checking in and checking out and et cetera. I do have just a couple questions. It seemed kind of clear to me that the previous language in regarding the beginning on Friday at 12 and ending Friday at 12 noon, pardon me. The change seems to be a little confusing to me with the mid shift with 4 hours and shall end on a Friday with 4 hours. Can you kind of explain what that means?
Yes, so our work week does not start on Mondays or on Sundays like a standard or a work week elsewhere. Our work week actually starts mid-Friday and it goes on to the following mid-Friday. Now, with that in mind, field staff has a different schedule than admin staff. They start at 6:30, admin staff starts at 7:30. So rather than put an exact time, because it is different for field and staff, that's why the language indicates 4 hours into the shift.
Thank you. That clarifies that beautifully. I appreciate that explanation.
Of course.
And then also you had touched on changing the language on 22B1.
Mhm.
My question when it said drive time was, did you mean driving between sites? I would assume that would not mean they're on and off the clock throughout the day. But would your commute time refer to the travel time from Horton plant to the new plant or from the admin building here to whatever site they may be going to work at? Is that what you're referring to?
No, and
No.
that's actually part of the recent, I'm sorry, General Manager Wallen, did you want to?
No, that's fine. I didn't realize my,
Okay, so because of that, that's a very good observation. We are correcting the word drive time to further clarify commute time, which indicates coming from home like anybody would do any time of the day. That's why we are updating, tweaking it just a little bit to provide that clarification so that no, if the employee is in fact going to go from point A to point B while they are at work, one, they will be taking a work truck most likely. But it will be paid. This is just for somebody that is coming in on a scheduled Saturday. Let's say they took Wednesday off and they're scheduled to come to work on Saturday. That Saturday, even though it's not a regular work day for them, it will be, and we will not be paying for it. It's just commute time.
Again, great clarification. Thank you for that. Makes it much clearer for me now. And I think that was my only 2 questions on that. Thank you so much for your clarification and for the work you put into that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, you'll have the opportunity on Monday too, if you, over the weekend, you find additional questions and you want to ask them. Ted, anything?
Yes, sir. So, Arden, what is your process? I mean, when you see an employee, it says here, 10%, well, I'll read it here. It says, shall come, and what I'm reading is Rule 15. F, yes, sir. F, sir. F. Okay. Going down to the second line here. Shall commence work in the higher range at a step that minimum is increased of 10% above rate the employee was received prior to promotion. So what this is really saying here is you can give them a 20% raise if you feel necessary or higher.
I'm sorry, I didn't have that on. Basically 10, it has to be at least 10%, I think is how this reads. V, would you say that's how this reads?
I would agree. It says right there, 10%.
Yeah, but you could give somebody more if there's justification for it, I'm assuming.
Well,
I don't know that we've ever done that, but
between now and Monday, I would like to speak to you because I know that there's a couple employees that have gotten more than a 10% over the course of the years. And it just didn't, I'm amazed at how they went up so high in a 5-year period. So I would like to speak with you about that privately.
but this basically says that difference must be 10%. And if I'm not
10% or more is what I'm reading.
The change that's being proposed, that's before the board today, is the language that's in red and that says for that section, the new pay rate will be
Yes.
effective at the beginning of the pay period. It takes effect. That's the part that's being changed.
Yeah, the other part is strictly from what we've had in place.
So that's fine. I agree with all that. So we still have though, right now at 10%, which was what it was prior to today's meeting. And it could be 10% or more prior to today's meeting or continuing from today. That's what I'm questioning. How come we're not putting a limit on how what the percentage is? So let me just cut to the chase here, if I may. You made the comment earlier that you're in concordance with what the other water districts do. I did, and I was going to mention this, President Martin, that between now and Monday, I would like for the directors to take a look at, if you Google compensation Rancho California Water District.
Okay.
It was the best example I could find of how this was all working. They have the example of 5%. And if the employee being given a new position would be on a probationary period for 6 months. And then they would get their 5%. And there were some other things in there also that I really agreed with. It was very well written. So that's all I'm going to say for now. And I'll just let it go from there. And then Monday, after everybody looks at that, Metropolitan Water District also had one, but it was rather lengthy. The one I think that best suits Mission Springs Water District here is if you put in compensation Rancho California Water District, you'll find a very good outlay of how I believe this should go. Thank you.
Okay. You done?
Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, well, we do, well, first of all, we do have that online. We also would like to inform, I think some of the board members remember, we did a classification compensation study where we looked at, where we compared to the other agencies in the state.
And Mr. President, I just wanted to add to what Arden said at the beginning of the discussion on this item, and that is one of the reasons this comes before you is because the personnel rules and regulations were adopted by resolution. And so under what's known as the equal dignities rule, it can only be changed by resolution or something higher like an ordinance. So if something's adopted by resolution, it can't be modified by a minute action or by staff. It has to come back before the board to be modified by resolution. If you had an ordinance under the equal dignities rule, if you had an ordinance that the board had approved, that cannot be modified by resolution, minute action, or staff action. It has to be modified by an ordinance. So,
Okay. Again, we will be taking a look at this over the weekend and
I was wondering, because they're
commenting
talking
further.
about the employee requests and all that stuff.
If I leave here, I'll put it on my phone.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to item 10. Accept audited financial statements for year ended June 30th, 2022. It's recommended to review and accept the audited financial statements as presented by Rogers, Anderson, Malady, and Scott LLP. Some good news, I understand from,
Yes,
okay.
well, okay. Would you like me to begin?
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. President Martin. For the benefit of anyone that hasn't been through this audit like this for a water district before, let me explain what you might want to expect, because I think sometimes there's a misinterpretation of what an audit is. An audit is an analysis of the transparency and accuracy of the district's accounting and reporting. An auditor's report confirms or corrects what accounting has reported is a true and accurate depiction of our finances. We know we are in good financial condition, and especially at this point, but we want to check to be sure that what is reported to you is correct and in accordance with the generally accepted accounting standards. And that's what you'll hear today. This is also an opportunity to propose changes that can be implemented to improve whenever possible. And you're going to start hearing what we're doing to improve so that we can really be one of the most transparent districts in the state. We constantly make improvements every chance we get. And with that, I'll let Arturo introduce the auditors.
Thank you, General Manager Wallum, President Martin, and members of the board. We have completed the June 30, 2022 audit. And here to present is Brad Welliver and Garden Duran with Rams. And just a quick additional background, as you know, the state requires that we do the audit, to show our financial performance of the district. In addition to looking at the numbers, the auditors look at internal controls, and they also report to the board any challenges they had during the audit with staff. And in fact, they do check with all the board members. They do send out an annual letter to the board members on staff at that time to report to them any concerns or any major issues that they see with the district so that they can further do any investigation. So they did reach out to all the board members last year and will continue to do so every year. But again, they also provide recommendations on improving for the district, as well as best practices that they see while doing the audit and working with other districts. And with that, I'll pass it on to Brad, who will give you a presentation of the financial statements for June 30, 2022.
Thank you very much, Arturo, and good afternoon, members of the board. It's nice to be with you today. My name is Brad Welliver, and I'm the engagement partner on the audit of fiscal year ended 2022 for your district. And it's my pleasure to also introduce my colleagues here, Garden Duran, who was the engagement manager on this project and is now a partner in our firm, and also Sean Schmidt, who is here with us as well. He was in charge doing this audit. So we have the privilege of doing this audit for you. This is the third year that we perform this audit, and we wanted to give you an opportunity to also interact with us in this process. As Arturo mentioned, this is something that we started early in the year. We did reach out to you. We like to get feedback since we ultimately are accountable to those charged with governance, which is you and your role here. And we're going to present to you the audit report that we have, and also the observations that we had during the time frame and what we've learned through this audit process and what we've shared with management, any recommendations that had been made, and what we're doing to assist the district with its financial transparency. So with that, I first want to just turn it over to Garden, and she's going to give you some information about the audit, and then we might bounce back and forth to present some of the information in the financial statements that you have.
Good afternoon. I'm Garden Duran. I'm the manager on the audit. Just wanted to go over our overall audit process. And I know that, a few of you are new to the board, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of see how it is that we approach our audit and the things that we look at in our observations for the district. This year for the district and many local governments, it was a unique year in that GASB 87 was implemented. That's the GASB related to the lead, actually a very big change for governments. So you would see across many districts and many cities, they issued the reports a lot later than they normally do because of this. There's a lot of information that needed to be gathered, and you had to do the appropriate reporting. So we're happy to report that the district did a great job getting the right individuals to help them and assist them through going to all your contracts to see what applied, and that was properly implemented on your books. As far as our process, we come in every year and we get a new understanding of the changes and looking at recommendations that we might have made in prior years and how the district's moving forward. One of the things that we really enjoy about the district is the transparency of your management and their ability to answer all our questions timely and just take our recommendations and move forward with them. So from that, we've observed, your management, they're constantly going to trainings and looking in every way to be able to educate themselves, to be able to follow all the rules and regulations that are expected for the district to follow. And so from that perspective, we believe that the district has a very strong tone at the top, where you're making an effort to try to change and improve your processes every step of the way. So from there, as we're looking at your internal controls, over the years, we have been able to see the improvements in those controls. There was a few changes during COVID, and it was very difficult because a lot of people were working remotely, but we can clear how all your processes are becoming cleaner, and even the communication of management to the board to us, it's something that we see, and we see as something positive because the board is very much involved with everything that's happening within the district. As far as our management, we have no issues with management. Management's always been very responsive with us, and we enjoy doing this audit. So from that perspective, I think that Brad was going to go over our actual opinion, which, like the general manager said, is, a good opinion, and over some of the details of your.
Thanks, Garden. Yes, so the opinion that we have on the financial statement is called an unmodified opinion, and that means there's no modifications necessary in order for your financial statements to be in accordance with generally accepted accounting standards, which is great. That's the highest level of assurance that auditors can give, and that should give you confidence that the information that you have regarding the financial performance of the district for this fiscal year is fairly stated in all material respects. Now, in these statements, as Garden mentioned, there are a couple more, like one new thing that is of significance, and that is related to the she's mentioned GASB statement number 87, which has to do with leases. So for those of you that were that have, following along with these standards or heard my presentation last year, I mentioned that this standard was coming and that it was going to be a really big deal for governments. And this standard applied to all governments across the entire country, no matter whether you're a city or a cemetery district or a water sanitation district like you are. So this is really more about transparency. It doesn't change anything with the way that you operate your leases or decide from a business perspective on whether or not you should continue or enter into leases or anything. This is purely financial reporting, and leases have been a big part of government activities for as long as anyone can remember. But under the prior accounting standards, they didn't necessarily always show up on the face of the financial statements. Sometimes they did, depending if there were certain capital requirements that were met. And other times there might be just disclosures in the notes. And in other times they didn't show up anywhere on the statement, depending on the terms of the lease. Well, they've defined this a lot more clearly now. And the idea is to make it so that it's more transparent, so you can get an idea of the leasing activities that a government is involved in. And it makes the governmental financial statements comparable with each other more, right? You could look at two identical cities and not really have the full picture if one does a lot of leasing and one does no leasing. So in your case, where this is different is on pages 10 and 11 in your financial report. Well, in the draft that I have, it's page 10, 11. I hope it's the same. I'm not sure in your agenda package, but I'm looking at the statement of net position. And there is a new lines there that says lease receivable. And then on the following page, on page 11, on the liability section, you have leases payable. And there's a current and a non-current portion of there. So these are calculated, based on the implementation date and looking forward to how long these leases are. They're like in a case of like leases payable, this is like a debt, right? But these are lease agreements that you were already in. It's just now under the new standard, they get valued and placed onto the financial statements right on the face.
That's what he's talking about, isn't it?
Rather than just the notes. So this doesn't change anything from the perspective of what your obligations are, which I feel is really important for you to understand. This is not like a new liability or a new cash flow that the district didn't know about. This is only for financial reporting purposes. On the lease receivable side, it has usually, and in your case, like it has to do with cell phone tower leases. So you have money that's coming in from these leases, and that's why there's a receivable on the books. And we look at the term and the length or the amount to come up with that value. So that's the most significant change because it wasn't there at all last year. The other change that I did want to mention that has been affecting a lot of governments and indeed infected you as well is the net pension liability that's on page 11 on the statement of net position. So if you remember how the investment markets go, right, they're usually up and down, and CalPERS, who does your investments of your pension plan assets, they are in the market just like the rest of us with maybe our personal finances. And if you follow like the stock exchange, you see how it's got lots of ups and downs. Well, the unique thing about pensions is that they are measured 1 year before the financial statement date. So there's a year delay. So if you think back in time of how great investments did during that COVID year, that's when the investments were performing really well at CalPERS. And when investments perform well, the value gets marked up to fair value. And then that basically reduces your net pension liability. So your district, including everybody else that was in the CalPERS pool, saw a dramatic decrease in net pension liability. And in your case, it was very dramatic, probably in the tune to about $3 to $4 million decrease. But keep in mind, this doesn't mean that, it's going to stay that way because it's dependent on the market. And because we are measuring these liabilities a year behind, and now as we look back to see, well, how did the year 22 close? And how is that going to be reflected on next year's financial statements? Well, the market went the opposite direction. So we are fully anticipating, based on information CalPERS has put out, that basically all this paper, gain that you have is going to go away and kind of get back to a more normal amount that you had before. liability of the net pension. So right now on the books, it's showing at about $4 million as a net pension liability, but it's going to probably go back up to around 7.5 or so next year. Again, what I want to emphasize on the net pension liability, these are actuarial estimates of what the liability is. And although there is an unfunded portion of that that does carry an interest amount, this should be looked at different than a regular debt, like a bond debt, where you pay it off and it's gone forever, right? But in pensions, it never really goes away because you have ongoing obligations to make contributions for the active employees. There is an unfunded portion for the portion that for the retirees, but that paying off that balance is a much broader discussion that's kind of beyond the scope of this here, but is something that I know Arturo will be bringing, back to you at different kind of a context about pros and cons of paying it off. What I want you to understand from our perspective here, and in auditing it, we verify the numbers against the information that's coming from CalPERS to make sure they're presented fairly, and then you do not have a change in the contribution rate just when investments go up and down, right? So that's going to determine on how you've been paying off your unfunded liability. So just because it went down on paper here to 4 million doesn't necessarily mean that the contribution rate for the employees is going to be changing. It's a very slow moving process. In fact, even the changes in these investments are amortized over a 5-year period into your net income. So they try to smooth it out because they're trying to keep the standard is set in such a way that it tries to keep it from spiking every year. Although because it was such a great year in the investment market, there did turn out to be this spike in the investment performance. Those are the two main things that I'd say, just wanted to bring attention to. If we look back at the operating revenue on page 12 in the statement of revenues and expenses, if you just kind of go right down to the third to the bottom line there, that total change in net position, it's a favorable number. It's an increase of $10.4 million. Now, this is on the accrual basis of the district, but that's a phenomenal position to be in, where that's showing that you have had an increase in your net position, which is like the equity of the district of $10.4 million. Which is a great position to be in. If you go to the next page, which is looking at the activities purely from a cash basis, showing like cash coming in, cash going out, there was a net increase in cash of almost $8.5 million in cash. So that's a really great position to be in. You can see that on their screen there, the ending cash position is just under $48 million. Overall, the district seems to, have a lot of, things going well for it, because like as Garden mentioned, we didn't have any findings that we need to report to you of an internal control nature. There's, a lot of complexity into the way that, some of these accounts all come together and get ultimately into this presentable format here. But I think I'm going to hand it over again to Garden, who is going to talk a little bit about the future of the financial reporting.
Thank you, Brad. One of the things that the district is looking to do and have been working towards is changing your reporting from doing just the basic financial statements to do an annual comprehensive financial report. That report, it gets submitted to the GFOA. It's one of the organizations that helps with transparency on the for the government sector. And so we're very close to converting it to an ACFR. That's the acronym that's used for it. This year, I think that the last piece that we're waiting for is the statistical section. The statistical section in the back adds, from financial reporting to different operating information, but it needs to have 10 years of information in it. And so that's why, I know that Arturo's working closely with someone to get all that information compiled, and it's getting very close to being completed. So I think at this point, you can expect that you should have that annual comprehensive financial report next year. It will help with the transparency in the sense that now this report will be sent to another agency while it gets reviewed and all the disclosures are looked at closely. And it's just a next level of adding an element of transparency to the district, which speaks greatly to management and how they're trying to move forward in that direction.
And especially since this is not a requirement for them to do, but they're volunteering. It's like you volunteered, like you're going to clean up your room and make it look all pretty, and you're going to invite the whole neighborhood over to come take a look at it, right? So you're inviting criticism over your financial statements by putting it out there for basically peer review for other technical reviewers to look at this and say that yes, it is in the condition that it needs to be in, that provides all the transparency that are required for this level of financial reporting. The good thing is that both Garden and I are technical reviewers for the GFOA program. And although we don't review any agencies in California, because that's, they try to keep that so that we're not like reviewing any clients or potential clients, we are very familiar with what it takes in order to do this. So we're working closely with Arturo and his team to make sure that when we do this initial submission for the award of excellence in financial reporting, that there will be no problem getting that approved.
Thanks, Brad, Garden, and Sean. I also wanted to say thank you to the accounting staff, Rachel and her staff. As you remember, we had some staffing changes last year. Rachel came on board in August and quickly picked up pretty much the district finances and was able to get pretty much be involved with the audit almost exclusively, to provide the auditors what they needed. And so I want to say thank you for all her hard work, including her staff. So, and that's the presentation of the audit. And if there's any questions from the board, please.
Okay. I'm going to start with Board Member Duff, because I'm sure she has some questions or comments. Just a lucky guess on my part.
Thank you, President Martin. I do. Okay, I have to, let's see, where am I? The audited, yes. Okay, so just a couple questions. First of all, a comment that I want to make. It is so nice to hear such praises from the Rams company of our management and staff. It's very nice as a new board member to hear such compliments and to hear the information that you've provided as far as how transparent and how quickly they've responded. Those all sound wonderful to a new board member. I did want to ask a few little questions about how, and I think I'm missing a couple pieces of information here. You mentioned, Arturo mentioned that previous board members received a letter from the Rams company and an opportunity to kind of discuss how this audit was proceeding. I was wondering if the new board members could receive a copy of that, or at least, I don't know if Mr. Meyerhoffen, Director Meyerhoffen did.
No, I don't believe so.
But if I could at least see that, it would just kind of help me see a little bit clearer picture on where we've gone. And although I loved hearing that there was no modifications to request or to add, I would hope that there have been some constructive criticisms provided and that there were some tools and suggestions still made. And I would hope that we would be able to see those as a board. And the last comment slash question is, I'm sorry, one second. There was mention with the documents I received, a report that's dated 3/21/23 that is like your, I'm guessing that's your formal draft report, but I didn't see that in here. I don't know if I'm missing it. I was looking at it online. Is that something we as a board haven't been provided yet? And just by approving these audited financials that you've reviewed that were provided by our staff is what we're being asked today, and we'll be receiving a report later? I'm just trying to clarify that process.
Yes, thank you, Director Duff. I will forward that letter to the current board members. As you know, the audit, and I agree with you, even though the audit is for 2022 and you were not a board member, you should still see what information went out to in regards to the request that we made. There will be a formal letter from RAMS as well on Monday with their recommendations and also their investigation and review of internal controls. A formal letter basically to the board telling them what they found, if anything, and with one or two recommendations that we discussed at our closing meeting with the general manager for sure. And I will provide you an updated report because yes, it is the draft dated. It's not official until the board approves it. That's the actual date that the audit is completed, because technically if there was any major issues discussed here today, could have potentially changed the numbers or any other details, but that's why it's stated that way. So we will provide an updated report with all of that cleanup by Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you,
Yes.
President. That's all.
Okay. Ted?
Yes, I was wondering why it says draft subject to change up in the upper right-hand corner of all the pages. So what's the reason for that?
Yeah, like I just discussed with Director Duff, if there was any changes based on recommendations by the board or any outstanding items that we would have brought for your recommendation, is usually when it requires a change. There was nothing that that we were bringing to the table for you to review to provide recommendation, unless there was any concerns, major concerns that you had that were not recorded in the audit. Then we would also do that at this time before the final audit is provided and that is taken out of the report, the word draft.
It's just kind of part of the formal process we go through, where this is not going to say final until we have your comments on it.
So when we vote on this, that'll be it, what we see, is it?
Correct. The draft will be taken out because at that point it will be final and approved by the board.
All right. My next question is on page 28, have here Mission Creek 80 acres. Where's that located at? What?
Well, I don't know, Danny, maybe you can answer that better than I can. It's west of here, almost straight west, but
Yeah.
a little south.
was,
I don't know how to answer that other than.
Is this on? Good afternoon, directors. That 80 acres actually is west of Little Morongo, roughly where Mission Creek runs at a southwest or southeast and northwest direction, right adjacent to that on the west side, south of what is 14th Avenue on that side, which we know as Two Bunch Palms Trail.
Okay, so it's not where the new treatment plan is, then it's
Oh,
No, it's due north of there.
you know, north of
yeah,
that.
it's where, although at some point we may use it for recharge.
Okay, I know that the district owns some properties here in there. And I would like to get a list of those properties that we do own, where they're at and what's going on with them. So I'd like to get that list if I may. Thank you, Danny.
Well, I'll provide it to the entire board.
Great, yeah, yes. Anything I ask for, I'd like to see it go to the entire board.
It might take a while sometimes because it seems like it's real easy to do, but we go through, we exchange, some of these things are in limbo, but I think we can get something together.
As long as it doesn't take a while that you forget about it, because I'm not going to.
If I may, we have a version that has been kept up. Engineering's done a good job of keeping that. There's a graphic portion, also a tabulated list of that, so we can provide that. I capture everything in the entire district. It is hard to zoom in on, but the tabulated information will provide details as far as APN lot size. But it is in the process of being updated, but we'll make sure we get that taken care of.
Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, I've
Thank you.
asked for that.
Thank you. My next comment here is that, this is kind of quite complicated. I've not studied finances in college or anything, and this is quite a presentation here. Let's see, where did that go? I had another page here, something about Department of Agriculture.
The USDA loan?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's IDE, that we had to get a loan out to basically come up with that system out in IDE to provide water to our customers out there. And that's what that is, the United States Department of Agriculture on page 27.
Believe that, yeah, it sounds like a page. When you say out there, what area are we referring to?
IDE,
The west end of the district.
yes,
West End, out by Whitewater, that area?
Whitewater, yep.
Yes.
All right, thank you. My other comments for the board of directors, actually, starting here on about page 48, we get into some of the loans and interest we're paying, and we have that money in the bank, and it just seems that, I'm like a guy who likes to be debt free. And I know that money in the bank there is drawing some interest, but at the same time, I also know if we get in a jam repairing something during an earthquake or something like that, we all have FEMA and other government agencies that are going to step in to help us, hopefully.
Well,
Depending on how hard it get hit across the freeway, that kind of thing. But yes, just I like to bring to everybody's attention how much money we're spending in interest here and how low some of these could be.
yeah, you've actually budgeted and funded a financial strategic plan, which is where we get into a lot of those issues. And I'll let you, jump in anytime you want to, Arturo, but we have different funds for different, a lot of those. In fact, I'm not sure that we have any loans on the rates. I cannot use rate money to pay off assessment district loans. Those assessment districts, excuse me, yes, Arturo, do you want
Sorry
to
to cut you off, but you got it right, General Manager Wallum. Most of our loans are assessment districts that we had to take out in order to construct the sewer on these properties to take advantage of the grants that were available at that time. Had we not, obviously, we wouldn't have been able to get those grants. And so that was the interest rate available at that time. We have refinanced several of those because we understand that interest rates did go down. But some of these, we didn't have an option, like, for example, 84 and 87, even though they're at a roughly 7.5 interest rate, they're about to be paid off. And it was just a timing at that point of those areas that we had to construct. And as you know, that is our process to construct and pay for sewer on properties before we put them on the property taxes to collect to pay back those loans.
So what you say on some of these, you can't pay them off because had to be involved with grant money?
There was the type of loans that we got on some of these. But the two main ones are already falling off. And there's not that much interest to be paid off on those.
Okay, thank you.
President Martin, I apologize for interrupting in the middle of this, but I saw that Director Griffith.
I was just going to announce that,
Okay.
to let the record reflect that Director Griffith has joined us. Welcome.
And
Director Griffith.
And I understand that Director Griffith, you're attending due to a family medical emergency. That's why you're attending remotely. Is that correct?
That is correct. My father was in the hospital for 38 days and just got released. So my sister usually takes care of him, but she is not here. So I have the duty.
Okay. And so Director Griffith did notify the district ahead of time that he needed to attend under the emergency exception. And so we need to go back to item 2, and we need to have the board take action approving his attendance under the emergency exception at this time, since he's now participating.
Yes.
Yes, I apologize. I could not check in too early to my hotel today because I had to move hotels, and I could not get internet. So it took them a half hour to get me out. So sorry.
So
You're saying we have to go back to item 2?
well, we just need to take action to approve his attendance under the emergency exception.
Okay, we'll temporarily go back to item 2, announcement and verification of remote meeting participation pursuant to AB 2449 or GC 54953 subsection B.
I'll make motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have a roll call vote, please.
Director Meyerhoffen,
Yes,
Director Duff,
Yes.
Director Griffith,
Yes.
Vice President Sewell,
Yes.
President Martin.
Yes,
Motion passes.
okay. And give our best speedy recovery to your father. That's-
Thank you.
Okay, are we through with the audit presentation?
No, I
Oh,
think
I'm sorry.
Director Griffin and-
Yeah, okay. Any questions?
Not too many questions, more just glad to hear that the audit came back good, and that Garden mentioned that she's seen improvements over the few years that Rams has been our auditor. So thank you to our management and staff that's been working together with Rams. And I was excited to hear that comprehensive report is something we're not required to do, but that we're going to push forward to be more transparent. So again, thank you to staff. I guess my question would be, is there one area that really sticks out that Rams thinks that we still need to make improvements on? Is that something that would be provided, like a list of goals you'd like to see before the next audit next year?
Yes, it will be something that's provided. I just wanted to clarify something to Board Member Duff as well. There's different levels of letters. So we have an internal controller financial reporting letter. Then if for some reason the district had significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in your internal controls, we would draft up that letter, and that letter would be provided directly to the board to make you aware of these deficiencies that the district has, because these would be, they could cause for you to end up with a qualified opinion or something other than unmodified. And so they're very serious, significant deficiencies in internal controls that get presented to the board. With that said, what we normally provide to management is, like we said, when we see things that, could change, or we see that why something has been deficient, but it doesn't have that level of significance. It's just more like Arturo said, a best practice, or something that if it goes unchecked, it could create a problem in the future if the aggregate of these things kind of continue to grow. One of the things that we have noted, and is something that the district's working on, is your communications and reporting for your fixed assets. And so that's one of the things that you'll see on the letter as far as what our recommendations are, what management's doing to make some of these changes. And some of these things are just basic, I guess clarification of communication between departments, so that it's very clear and finance can have the information when certain assets are sold or removed, or even just looking at your old listings for your fixed assets and seeing if there's any obsolete items, things that need to get removed, and just basically things like that. So it's one of the things that over the years that we've started doing the audit, management has been working on, and that have been looking at this closely. And so yes, one of the things we discussed was providing a letter listing out the details of the observations that we have made that would help them improve in their operations of this area. But like I said, these recommendations and some of the things that you'll see in this, these are recommendations that we feel would be better best practices or help, improve their operations, but they are not items that are creating significant deficiencies in their internal controls to where they are required to be reported to you as a board.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you. And I guess just for clarification, Arturo, I guess more for the public, but we're required to change auditors by law. Is it every 5 years?
That's every 6 years. And the law basically says that it's almost like having a fresh set of eyes. So we're not required to change audit firms, but we can have just a different auditor or partner in charge of that firm do the review and in charge of the audit, as opposed to the same person that's been doing it for 6 years. And so, yeah, we have another year, I believe, with Rams in our contract, and we'll be bringing back to the board to decide on how we move forward after that.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, and Director Griffith, I realize you arrived late. Do you have any questions or comments concerning the financial report?
No, I think they were well covered. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
But I just want to say that every year we do change, we make those changes, and next year you will see the changes that we've discussed this year, and we can always improve. And so that's why you have we did it differently this year than last year and the year before.
Okay,
So, okay.
all right. Anything further from the board? Okay, moving on to item 11. ESRI Small Utility Enterprise Agreement for GIS Services. It's recommended to approve an ESRI Small Utility Enterprise Agreement at an amount of $28,400 per year for a contract period of 3 years. Arden?
Thank you, President Martin. And I apologize again, this is a very small item. It almost falls under, the radar, but this is so exciting to me. And I think this is the beginning of what I think will be a very comprehensive overhaul of our workflow system. And, Brian has been doing a good job, and Kurt has been there helping, and we have technology and we have workflow, and we need to make a number of changes. This one today is this is where we're beginning with Esri and the GIS system. Kurt will give you a more detailed description of what that is. One reason we can start out here, it's going to be a long, drawn out process, let me tell you, and it's not terribly expensive compared to what we spend on infrastructure, but it will help us internally really get with the times, and it's necessary. We need to do these changes. So with that said, I'm going to let Kurt explain to you what is on the agenda for today.
Thank you, General Manager Wall. I'm going to share my screen here. One moment. There we go. Good afternoon, President Martin and members of the board. So what I'm going over today is an agreement from Esri for basically it encompasses all the software licensing, all the software itself, the support, and some of the hosting that we'll need for some big improvements that we'll be making. So GIS, if you're not familiar with it, stands for Geographic Information Systems. And basically it's software. Oh, pardon me, let me hide this. There you go. It's software that powers the maps. It controls our assets. It lets us link assets to locations geographically. It lets us tie in other systems to those assets in the field. It's kind of the backbone for basically anything that is in the ground, for managing anything that's in the ground or in the field. So we can even tie in equipment to this as well. So for the wastewater plants, we'll be able to put those, the equipment in the plant that's actually doing the work can be tied into this as well. And then this allows us to tie this into other management systems for creating workflows for data, for work orders, for inventory, for asset management, for maintenance. Basically, GIS is kind of the system that lets us link the physical things all around us to the systems that manage all of that. Esri is the leader in the field. They basically invented the GIS software, and there really is no equal. There are competitors to Esri, but competitors in only certain services and features that Esri has. There is nothing that is the equivalent to Esri, which is why they're the standard. They're what you are taught if you go to school for GIS. They're what any major agency out there will use. So just to, excuse me, to explain why Esri, we did do our due diligence on this, did compare, looked into what some other software is that you can use. And like I said, there really isn't anything that can take the place of Esri as a whole. There's nothing that will integrate with other systems the way that Esri's platform will. You won't find any other water districts that we might want to work with and share data with that are using anything other than Esri. The City of Desert Hot Springs, CVWD, DWA, they all use ArcGIS as their backbone. And that's what we intend to start doing. ArcGIS, it is a little expensive, as you saw in the proposal that was included in the board packet. But with that, you get this massive suite of pretty much everything that we need and everything that we're going to need. And the support that goes with it, because if you use really anything else, now you start getting to the point where you're going to need your own software developers. We would need a team of software people to do the programming, to do the integrations ourselves. So the expense just will skyrocket from there. Also, one of the nice things about this and this proposal that we got from Esri is it includes the growth. So it has what we need right now, but it also gives us this nice cushion for scaling upwards. And that'll allow us to start small, start more affordably on some of the projects that we're working on. But as we grow it to the whole district, our growth is built into this contract. So as we need to add more users, add more software, expand the servers that are going to power all of this, we will already have everything that we need. So in summary, basically our staff is already familiar with some of these products. It is the most used system out there. And the fact that it's used by other agencies means it really will be easy for us. If we need to share data, if we need to work collaboratively on any projects, we're going to have the ability to do that. And it's really the only one that integrates with everything the way, without extra development, I guess. Pretty much any major system out there that we would want to take on that involves GIS, they're going to integrate with Esri. If we go with any other service, any other platform, it just doesn't work the same way. Basically, this also means that we have the support of Esri behind this to help with our development, to help with problems when they occur, troubleshooting, anything like that. So it takes the burden of the troubleshooting and management of just keeping the system up and running, more on them, less on us, and then we can focus on growing the applications and the solutions that we're going to be building with this platform. And as I kind of already covered, this agreement does contain everything that we're going to need to get started. It also contains the things that we're going to be needing to start building systems that'll go beyond the initial purpose of this. Initially, this will allow us to start with the project management. I'm sorry, the maintenance programs, the work order systems, the asset management for the new regional plant. But then once we have that in place, we can actually start expanding it to the rest of the district. And as I said, it scales with us. So this agreement really contains everything we're going to need. And it's a lot cheaper than if we were to buy these things a la carte. The second attachment I had in the board packet, the cost guide, does lay that out a little bit so that you can see if we tried to just buy things from Esri here and there as we need them, it actually ends up becoming more expensive pretty quickly. And that's a best case scenario, what is presented there, because we would actually be buying more licenses than what they've shown. They only have one license in there. We would need multiple licenses for the different departments, for the different people using these things. So that's actually a low number compared to what it would actually cost us. So if you have any questions, I'd love to take them. And
okay. Any questions from the board? Amber?
Wonderful presentation. Thank you for that. Just a couple quick questions. One, although you're presenting it from the IT department, it seems like this would actually be pretty spread across several different budgets. Are we within our current budgets in this contract edition at this time? Do we know?
Yes, we have the budget for this. We actually kind of included some of this in our mid-year budget, knowing we would be going in this direction.
Great to hear that. Let me see what my other question was here. Oh, section 3.4, the proposed contract section, I apologize. They talk about the government out clause, but there is no discussion about whether or not, let's say, as technology is changing all the time, something really, really fantastic comes along in 1 year and it's what everybody jumps to. I just want to know, is there an actual out clause, or do we fall under the government code? It didn't seem to tell me that we had that ability.
I can look that up and get back to you. I don't have an answer on that right now. To be perfectly honest, though, I mean, this has been the standard for a long time, and this doesn't answer your question. I understand that, but they're not going to be going anywhere, and there would be no reason that we'd be switching technology partway through the contract. But I can look that up and get you an answer.
Did you say 3.4?
I wrote it down as section 3.4.
And that section is, gives the district an out if the board doesn't authorize the funding for that year. So each year you approve the budget. And I think your question is a little bit different than just that section. It's dealing.
That might be because it said government, and see, I was looking online, so it looks a little different to me here. Hold on. The 3.4 was the only where, other than material breach, which is kind of obvious, where it said, but it said government or government owned entities if their government funds did not arrive. So are you saying that because we serve as a legislative body, those funds are okay? Now I understand.
Correct,
Thank you.
because
that answers it.
typically a government agency will approve a budget each year. And so if things change financially for a government agency, and their ESRI contracts with a lot of governments, small governments, mid-sized governments. And so it's up to you to approve the budget. And if you decide you don't have the funds available and you want to terminate the contract, you can do that. And they recognize that you have the power to do that in section 3.4.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was it.
Ryan, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, and that answer was actually where I was going with that. This ESRI has had such a strong history with government. They understand how it's working, and they don't extend themselves past the year, especially a contract like this. It's a user platform, if you will. There are other things that will be brought to you that will sit on top of the ESRI. We use ESRI right now for our closed circuit television. So when we start adding components to this, those components may have a implementation that they spread across the contract. So if the implementation is, let's say, $70,000 and it's a 3-year deal, they'll spread that 70,000 over. So that's why you'll see some user contracts a little bit different. But ESRI, because it's such a big platform, and as Kurt was talking about, it's so widely used and accepted, that is the connection, if you will, to all the other things that sit on top of it that we will use in our trucks, our CCTV, and everything else. So they're a little bit different. You caught the right clause, and some of the other contracts that we bring you may have that same clause, but in reality, it's because of the user side will be able to be terminated, but some of that integration that they spread across contract years is really the difference in that clause that will, and we will always separate that out, just because that's one of the things that we struggle with is when we make an investment in a software, we're paying for that implementation across years. But what if, like you mentioned, what if somebody else comes up with a better mousetrap? We want to have the ability to move to that. So what is that cost to cancel that contract? So very good question.
President Martin, if I may, this also addresses the concerns of the audit and their recommendation from an asset standpoint. As you know, right now, when we put in 3 miles of pipe underground and we end up replacing 1 mile later on, it's very hard for our current system to be able to tell us what section of those pipes were removed and replaced and take out of our system in terms of the accounting. And so we can start depreciating that asset accordingly. We don't have that ability right now. With what Kurt is bringing to the board, it's exactly what takes care of that issue so that we can start tracking better our assets and addressing them as we remove them and add them in the financial statements as well. Thank you.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen my board just recently, but this is all part of that same process. Now we're going to bring, but we do know that ESRI is consistently something that we can count on, that will be usable by almost anything we would use for all these other categories, from finance to human resources to whatever we're doing, operations. We That's, so we knew we could start here. And we just need to get started. We need to do it in a very slow and methodical process, because you're right, as time goes on, we may decide that we don't want to use this, we want to use something else, but we're pretty confident that this is consistently used.
Okay, Ted?
Yes, I don't know if Kurt remembers, but he was helping me with my iPad here about 3 months ago. And I noticed on his wall, he said GIS. And I was kind of excited about it. And I'm familiar with it. And I think this is really a great program for the water district. It is really going to be an asset for us. As Arturo was saying about the mapping part of it with the water lines and that, perhaps if he could bring in a not a presentation, just a couple quick, something you put up there on the screen so they could see, the directors can see how it actually will be operating for us. So they give them a better idea. We understand it, but the presentation kind of got into the technical part, but yeah, I think you understand what I'm saying there, the layman part of this.
It's impressive when you look at this and you know that we can overlay the water and overlay the sewer, and you can see them, or we can pull them off, we can compare.
Yes, that's the part I'm looking for there.
It gives you information that you couldn't possibly do otherwise.
My next comment is how much some of this, now the software, whenever there's the company's going to update the software, so they're going to continue to make it better and better, and that's not going to be a charge on the water district. I don't think. I'm not sure if that was part of Amber's question there or not, but yeah, they'll continue to upgrade the software and making it better throughout.
Yes, as long as you've got an active maintenance contract with them, which is what this is, then yeah. Anytime they come out with a new version, we instantly get access to it.
Yeah, we're paying for a service primarily, not infrastructure.
Okay, the next question is, there's a lot of this table A here. The training, how much are we looking at to train our employees to be able to use these different systems? I know that they're not all of them are going to be going into all of this. The guy out in the field is going to be looking at part of it, and a different guy is going to look at a different part. So there's going to be some kind of training there for some of them. And do we have an estimated cost or what?
Pretty much levels of access and training that you can get.
Yeah.
Go on, I'll let you answer that, Kurt.
Yeah, well, the contract does include, unlimited online training. So we'll have that at our disposal for anything people need to know. As far as interacting at that kind of level with the Esri product, a lot of our staff probably won't. They won't have a need to. We'll be able to publish certain maps and things that they'll just log in and kind of, if you can use Google Earth, you can probably use a lot of what they'll be using here.
Sure.
But this is kind of, this is kind of the backbone for where we're going to be going. So we'll have other applications that our staff will generally interact with more, like the work order management system that handles the workflows, it handles the assets in the field. That'll be the interface that our staff normally will touch. And that kind of sits on top of this and then directly access the data that's inside of this. So that'll be the most of what our field crews will be using. That'll be what our wastewater operators will be using. And then people in-house, it'll probably be whatever is required for their job. So they might actually get in here just a little bit. Engineering definitely will, because engineering is currently using ArcGIS to do some modeling. So they actually already know what they're doing with that. But the rest of our staff, customer service and stuff, generally they'll be interfacing with the system that sits on top of this, and they will be trained in that.
Let me add to that. It's almost like looking at an Apple phone. The Apple phone in itself is what all the apps sit on top of. And that's the apps that are what we typically use. So as Kurt was saying, our wastewater guys may use CityWorks, which is actually the work order management system that's a component in the phone, if you will, would be the GIS platform or the iPad or whatever. And that's what's running behind it. So as far as who will be working on this on a daily basis, you're probably looking at Kurt, the GIS specialist that's in the budget. And like he said, maybe some of the engineering folks, but for example, we have Innovise, which does the modeling. It sits on top of the Esri platform, and the model is what we use to actually push water around or collect the water and see how our system integrates. But it all sits on the Esri platform. That gives us a space and time, if you will, in a 3D application that allows that model to work more efficiently.
Yes, it's the model that I was kind of referring to, the directors to take over.
But you all need to understand that, we have different uses for the GIS, just like Director Duff said. This isn't going to be just engineering, it isn't going to be just finance, and it's going to be, it's going to be used almost universally. I mean, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, Kurt.
No, this is going to be something that's going to
Okay,
touch almost every aspect of our systems.
okay. Ivan, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and word this the best I can. We already have GIS through our engineering, and I guess my question is, how big of an undertaking is it to implement this? Are a lot of the things we already have going to be able to kind of just plug and play, and then we'll have everything together? Or is it like starting from scratch for some of the things?
It'll be kind of a mix. So most things, yes, plug and play. It'll be an easy transition. For the new plant, one of the benefits is that we are starting from scratch. It doesn't exist. So we're starting from scratch on the setup for that, which allows us to take advantage of some of the newer technology that Esri is trying to push all water districts into. And I won't go into the details of that, but it's a certain way of designing the maps and the way that everything on the maps connect to each other. It's a massive undertaking for a district that has been using this for the past 10, 20 years. Fortunately for us, we're just getting into this. So we have a pretty clean place to start. So a lot of our stuff is just going to import right into it. We'll be able to start using it. And then because we are so new into it, we're going to start building on top of that and migrating all of our existing data into that new format. So it won't be just like, okay, day one, here we go, everyone start using this. It'll take some time to get to that point. So we're looking at a build out that'll go quite a while, which is why we're going to start with the regional plant and then slowly expand from there.
I feel like it's almost a benefit that we're starting from scratch on some things just to have a clean slate. Other than staff time, do you see any other costs than this, $28,000 a year to get everything up and running? Are there going to be?
Yes, there will be. So this covers the licensing, the software, all that we need for the back end, but we still have the setup to do. This is going to involve setting up some virtual servers in the cloud. So I'm working on getting some quotes on that. So there'll be the setup in the cloud to put all this data in there and set up the environment to start working off of. And then we're going to need a little bit of probably some support from consultants on translating our data into that new format that I was talking about. And then of course the asset management system that sits on top of that, that'll have its own licensing fees and setup fees. We won't hit all these costs at once. This will be something that'll be spread out gradually, but we can't really move forward at all until we have something to start building upon.
And then how you mentioned it's set up for growth and to expand to different departments. Would that change that 28,000 figure for the software itself?
No, this is flat.
Okay.
The 3 years from now, I mean, unless, I don't know if they would raise their prices, but the reason we get this great deal is because they're helping out small utilities. And so we're a level 2. If you have less than 10,000 connections, I believe is the lowest level, then there's different pricing. We're in the level that goes up to 50,000 connections. And I think they have another one above that. But unless we grow above the point of having more than 50,000 connections, this is the same level that we're looking at. And 3 years from now, it'll probably be pretty close to this as well when we renew.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, yes. Director Griffith, do you have any questions or comments?
How quickly I'm forgotten. Yes, I do. So question, because you mentioned the cloud. So is this, I know it's a license, but is this like SAS, or is this, do we have to find a separate cloud service for this?
Yes, we will find a separate cloud service to host this. But this is, software of a service is included in this. That's the ArcGIS Online that you see in there. So we do have some level of cloud hosting that is provided by Esri, but in order to set up the full ArcGIS enterprise, you need servers for that. You need multiple servers for that. So either we need to make a massive expenditure in-house and plan where are we looking 5 to 7 years from now, and then buy a very heavy server to handle that, or we just set up a cloud environment scaled down to what our current needs are. And then as we find that we need to grow, then we just add more resources to that. So we'll most likely be looking at a hosted environment in Azure or Amazon's AWS.
Now, can we, if we did want to go from the cloud to our physical servers, can we
could
do it
migrate.
afterwards? Yeah.
Yeah, we could migrate.
And then, so as far as we mentioned about the mapping portion where it's going to show the lines, the water supply lines, the sewer lines, is it also, since the city of DHS is using it, is it also going to list other sorts of underground utilities at the same time, in terms of if we have a repair, we would have this visual that says, you know, we're 2 feet from this other conduit, maybe a gas line or something like that?
That's something that we would have to work out with the city. I can't really answer that at the moment, but if we share data with the city, depending on to what level we are able to work with them and how much data we can share with them and they can share back to us, we'd have access to more than we currently have, but I can't speak to that at the moment.
So it would have the capacity for information sharing with other utilities as far as the locations of lines.
But, and that's one reason Esri is one of our choices, is because it is consistently used by all. We put in there, I think one of the slides showed you what the DHS uses it, CVWD, DWA, which we share information with, which, you know, our agencies we share information with.
And I think Brian can speak on that a little bit better.
Director Griffith, that's a good question. And we constantly try to work with the city and exchange shape files, which is the information you're making reference to. The issue with those files or making them live is sometimes those change. And we, just like the city or the gas company or the electric, they don't want to take the responsibility for having a utility shown up on a map that we believe to be accurate. So there is a legal process, the USA requests and things of that nature that are required for us to go to construction, but it gives us an idea to start from. So while we do exchange that information for us personally in here, we don't use it for those types of activities, but it's nice to have. So hopefully that answers your question. We'll never go live with that type of information, but we will exchange it with the city so they and we have information to allow us, our crews, a little bit more access to those types of things.
So we'd still probably have to call 811 in some circumstances.
Absolutely. We're required to, both from a design perspective and a
Absolutely.
construction perspective. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Anything further?
I have one more thing.
Okay, briefly.
Yes. it'll be-
Thank you.
I'm all for it going up into the cloud, but just because there's so much information here, I'd like to see the water district have a hard drive dedicated for that information also, so we have a backup just in case something should happen.
Yes, we'll ensure that we have multiple layers of backup so we can recover no matter where something goes down.
Yeah, the cloud is becoming extremely much safer than you think.
There's multiple data centers that this information will be housed on in case there is a catastrophe that happens, but also our iPads and our surfaces and things like that will actually cache some of the information. So when our field services are out in the field and lose connectivity, they can still do their job, still have access to that information, and still be able to record what they're out there doing. So there's a lot of different ways of getting that information, both to the cloud, to our iPads, to our surfaces, and back and forth. And then, of course, once we get that connectivity, everything is backed up again, and then it's pushed to other data servers or data centers.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
having that
We need that for emergency.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item 12, United States Army Corps of Engineering sponsor share of Assessment District 18, Area A and Area G design. Pardon?
Well, okay, I'm going to let Eric Weck take this from here. The Corps of Engineers, which is, and I'm just to give you kind of an idea of how this works before you get on, Eric. All of our projects are usually a 25-75% split. However, they also have some other rules, even though it does seem attractive that we only need the 20, usually we do this with a 50% share. But the one thing I did not see any information provided today is that this money will not come out of rate. So I wanted you to notice that. And this is a project like we've been doing with the groundwater protection program, where it's a shared cost between the assessment district and the grant that we're receiving. And of course, we're receiving our grant from the Corps of Engineers. So the bid resulted in a little higher cost than we thought. So that's what Eric's going to explain to you today.
Thank you, General Manager Wallem. Good afternoon, President Martin, members of the board. Item 12 of your agenda packet pertains to the design phase of the Army Corps of Engineers, where they will engineer and design areas A and G septic to sewer project. Areas A and G are areas within the district boundary that are not connected to our sewer system and currently use septic tanks. And they are identified as needing design and construction efforts to ultimately connect those parcels to sewer service. MSWD and the Army Corps of Engineers have agreed to share in the project costs, as General Manager Wallem alluded to. And that's a 75-25% cost sharing, where the Army Corps funds 75% of the costs and the district funds the remaining 25%. Presently, the design of the new sewer mains and laterals are being completed by a consulting engineer that's under contract with the Army Corps of Engineers right now. The Army Corps initially estimated the design of these areas to be $1.6 million, with Army Corps' share to be $1.2 million and MSWD's share at $400,000. MSWD provided its share to the Army Corps of $400,000 back in 2019. The actual design costs were higher than the Army Corps anticipated, which results in an additional share needed from MSWD in the amount of $83,325. Now, staff has checked with finance, and there are adequate funds available within the project budget. And staff recommends authorizing the general manager to negotiate and render payment for MSWD's share of areas A and G for the sewer design project. Are there any questions?
No, I don't have anything. That was well done, but I think Amber has a question. I can see a smile on her face.
All right. Thank you for this presentation. And I was reading the attachment, and we've been working with them, from what I could tell, since 2003. I guess what I need clarified for me to help me understand this, because initially looking at these documents, like you said, I saw maybe $1 million cost to the district when I was looking at these older documents, but we've spent over $2.5 million since 2003. And I'm just wondering, is it that every year we evaluate other areas, and each of these amendments were different locations that they were designing? And so it's just a continuing project, or is this? Okay.
Well, I'll let Eric answer.
I'm seeing nods. Please try and help me understand the differences between all these amendments.
Yes, ma'am. The amendments cover different projects, and this is cumulative over several years. It's my understanding that over the past 20 some odd years, the district has completed about 6 Army Corps of Engineering jobs. And that is, my understanding is that it is cumulative. It's not just one project. It's not just this one specific project we're presenting to the board today.
Okay. And so that I'm understanding correctly, like in 2003, we had a certain set of projects that they designed, but then And we paid them that amount of money in the original contract. And then in 2004, an increase in that design cost of 173. I guess where I'm confused is that each of these just say an increase in estimated design costs. They don't tell us specifically which areas the design was moving from. So it's hard for me, as far as I can tell, it's all just District 18 area A and G. And that seems like a lot of money for just 2 locations.
No, that's a good question, ma'am. These are several projects, and what I can do is I'll reach out to the Army Corps and get some more information as to what these projects are for. But we just got authorized back in 2019, I believe, to focus our efforts on AD 18, which covers areas A and G. So I'll find out what the prior years were for.
I appreciate that clarification. And I know this has been a huge benefit to our community as a whole, and I'm certainly not questioning that. I'm just trying to understand, and when the public looks at these documents, allow them to understand that this was not all for just the same locations. And,
Yes.
and this work has gone throughout our whole city and our whole district to accomplish these projects.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, we'll have to go back and take a look, and, but I mean, this is a different process than what we're going through, say, for example, with the regional plant. This is the state. And there are stories with each of these different funding sources.
Robert, do you have anything questions you want to ask?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Ted?
Yes, thank you, Director Duff. I was wondering the same thing. I started off here with one and I got back here when we're going to send them a check for $83,000, and I was kind of confused myself there. I'm familiar with the Army Corps of Engineers with the Colorado River and Salton Sea and a certain railroad and a bridge. And I'm very interested on if somebody can send me some information on how the Army Corps of Engineers got all the way over to here.
Well,
Involved in the whole water.
okay, they have
It doesn't have to be right now there, but
okay.
I think Russ may have a place he needs to get to later. So I would like to get some information on that.
You can just tell you in general, we go after a very specific pot of money called 219 funds with them. And it's the Corps has been charged with setting out money for I guess, I don't know what you would say, Danny, environmental projects or whatever. But the Corps', I mean, you're on a good point. The fact of the matter is the Corps' mission is storage, reservoirs, dams. And so, but they do have they have been branching out, and there's monies available in different areas, and we watch and we maintain that. And that a lot of this comes from our lobbyist in Washington, DC, and she knows how to maneuver through this.
All right, I'll have to do a little more research on the Army Corps of Engineers to understand where they're really at and all this, but
Section
I'm
219 is the portion of their law that we go after.
219, is it? Yeah, thank you.
Anything further, Ted?
No, sir.
Ivan? Nothing for me. Okay, thank you, sir. Good presentation. Moving on to discussion items, we have 2, the Nancy Wright Regional Water Reclamation Facility update and the Critical Services Center and Administration Building update. Do we have any?
Well, I'm hoping that Mr. Ledbetter is here today. I haven't seen him on the screen here, but I think he is probably here.
Yes, good afternoon, General Manager Wallem. I am in attendance today. So good afternoon, President Martin, members of the board. I'd like to share a presentation with you. If you bear with me, I'll share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. So this is an update on construction progress over the last month, generally through the month of February, kind of bleeding into the early month of March. On the influent pump station, the walls have been formed on the influent pump station all the way up to ground level. And you'll see what the contractor actually began laying the 36-inch vitrified clay pipe, the influent sewer line that will deliver flows from the district service area to the treatment plant. So it's good to see that work going, that work underway. That water then flows through the headworks area, and the contractor continued on working on all the forming, the embedments and reinforcements through the headworks area. You can see they're working on a lot of the wall fabric and some of the knockouts where the water channels will actually flow in the pictures on screen. In addition, a majority of the walls for the SBR tanks have been completed. And now they're working on the last two portions of the walls and working on the catwalks, permanent walkways that will be around each tank for our maintenance crews and operations crews to go out, maintain and observe the treatment process from time to time. In addition, they completed a majority of the yard piping. This is the laying of a 24-inch diameter ductile iron pipe for the effluent water that will be delivered down to the spreading basins for the treated wastewater to be disposed of in percolation ponds. The next few slides, I just kind of wanted to walk through something that we discussed at the field walk with the board a couple weeks back, and kind of walk through and show you a little bit of information on the operations building, the main anchors that really tie the building together and provide the structural support and seismic support and support from, you know, the winds that it will see. So generally it starts with the construction of the footing. Here they're digging out roughly an 8 by 8 by 2 foot deep area for a footing for one of the major building columns. From there, they set up the rebar for the different footings, and the big kind of square footing that we saw before now has a bunch of rebar ties through it. And then some of these bolt anchors are just kind of roughed in place on where they'll need to be to basically bolt the building down and transfer those loads down to the ground. From there, the contractor then sets those in the exact location. You see, you know, it gets as intricate as getting the bubble level out, the survey equipment, running string lines to make sure those bolts are in the exact right location for the prefabricated metal building to stand on. From there, you see now this is the finished product with the steel column being bolted to those bolts you saw on the footing before. And that's really how the main operations building gets tied in, and all the loads get transferred from the roof, from the walls, and from anything else seismically down to the columns, and then from the columns down to the footings, and from the footings down into the ground. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you for the board and district staff for coming out to get an update on the plant this last month, and really get to see where a lot of the work is being focused and how far the project has come along since beginning construction in April of 2022.
Okay. Amber, any questions?
And then regarding the funding for the project, excuse me. So regarding funding for the project, I did speak with the State Water Resource Control Board this week. They are still reviewing our final budget approval letter so we can begin the reimbursement process, but they don't anticipate having that completed until sometime in April. They don't have any questions. It's gone through several departments, but the one good takeaway there is that it's been through various different departments on its way back to finance for final approval, and there have been no red flags, no questions regarding our funding package. Regarding the conveyance line that will deliver flows to the treatment plant, we're still working on the pre-construction activities with the contractor, Downing Construction Incorporated. They're working on preparing traffic control plans so they can get out into the streets and begin the potholing procedures, and then start on the actual construction. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay. Yes, Amber, do you have any questions or comments?
Not today, thank you.
Okay. Robert, do you have any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Ted?
Yeah, thank you for having us out there. The building, the beams and that is most impressive. It's coming along nicely, and it's going to be a building that's going to last for 100 years at least. And thank you for putting it together, and I sincerely hope we can get that grant money.
Yeah, if they built prisons like that, nobody would ever escape, I guarantee you. Ivan?
Just real quick, timeline, we're still looking good, everything on track, or do you see any issues?
Yeah, there's been a little bit of slowdown. The cladding on the building, the insulation and the exterior structure, it was supposed to be completed by the end of this month. That's been delayed. There's been a lot of wind delay or windy days, high wind and rain days over the last month and a half. So that has slowed down kind of the critical path, but we're still relatively on schedule. I think we've only had 10 weather days to date over the last 11 months. So we're still looking good as far as overall schedule, just a little bit of minor slowdown on some of the work. So the contractor kind of has to focus work elsewhere that's not true critical path work to keep moving. But again, save up the man hours when they can actually do the work without the high wind.
Thank you.
I was very impressed during the tour. It was quite an amazing, every time I go out there, I'm just very, very impressed with the work that you've done and that the company has done and that staff has done putting that thing together. It's truly, truly remarkable. It's like watching the pyramids get built all over again. I'm very impressed. Okay. Are you going to do more information on the Critical Services Center?
I don't think there's much development, but Brian can report.
Just very quickly,
Okay.
we continue to work with our environmental consultant in the city. Environmental consultants working on the CEQA amendment. It will be completed in April. At that point, we'll be continue to work with the city, at least from a CEQA perspective. We are working with the city right now in a preliminary capacity to resolve some of the grading issues that they brought to our attention. We're going back and forth between the civil engineers to work through that issue to make sure we have the buildings at the right elevation. But right now, we're just waiting on the CEQA documentation to start having additional conversations with the city. So that's the update. The other second thing about moving forward with East Valley and the tour of that building, we did receive confirmation of some dates and we'll be getting those to you on Monday when Dory gets back.
Good.
So we'll be able to set that up.
Looking forward to that again, because since receiving additional information concerning that, I'll be able to mentally apply that to what I'm seeing over there. And it was a very impressive location, very impressive. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Leslie, I'm sorry, did you have any questions concerning the?
I've been concerned about this building all along, and Brian, you've been very good at answering my question, but this building, I seem to not be getting some of the answers I'm looking for, and I would like to know, when I look here at the registered demands, it seems like we're spending a lot of money with the architect every month. And normally we, a developer, you're very good at what you do with the water, but we're never hired to be a developer. And you're actually in the capacity of a developer. And we've spent $2 million so far on plans. And normally the architect or the contractor will go to the city to get the permits to build. So there's some things here, and when I ask, like I said, I don't seem to be getting a real straight answer. And why are we continuing to spend money with the architect? Every time we make a change, the blueprints are being printed up. It just doesn't take that long at this point, to make changes at the cost that we're paying. I understand we're paying for the architect's education and experience, but at what point do we say, enough is enough? Let's go before the commission and the planning commission and get this thing approved. So Director Griffin and I, one of our first meetings on the planning commission together was for an RV park. They came in with an overhead view, probably spent maybe $50 on it, and the commission approved it. Same thing with the distribution center. It wasn't $1 million worth of plans. It was just basic general plans. So I think we have enough to go before the planning commission now to get the conditional use permit. They would call that as Director Duff will learn here as she goes to these meetings, what's the word for it? A general idea of what's going on, they approve it, and then you bring the plans in and you discuss all this. So I'd really like to see, before any more money is spent, that we go before the planning commission and get this approved for the location, because that hasn't been done yet, apparently. I'd also like to see a electronic copy of the blueprints of the building and how it's being done. Thank you.
Okay. Ivan?
No questions.
Okay, Robert, any questions or comments regarding the administration building?
No.
Okay, Amber?
Just one, and I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this comment really, or kind of question. Director Meyerhoffen, you were bringing up taking it to the planning commission and obtaining the permit, but don't those permits come with a cost, and don't they expire? And since the board hasn't approved moving forward with the building or gotten an RFP process for a contractor or done any of those steps of the building, are we potentially asking staff to jump a couple steps? I can understand asking them to stop spending money on the architecture for a while, but I'm a little concerned that there may be additional or expiring permits that would then cost us more money if we jump the gun. I'm not certain on the process. Just
You can go with the conceptual plan is the term I was looking for.
Okay.
Which is just a general outline of what we're going to want to put there. A plan view, a picture of what the building might look like. There's a conceptual plan, and that conceptual plan, I believe, is good for 3 years. So at the end of the 3-year period, if the developer still hasn't got the money together or sold the project, they can come and renew that again.
nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, there are 2 items, the approval of minutes for February 16th, 2023, February 21st, 2023. Also the register of demands. You take a look at the minutes over the weekend and make any changes at that time or get any questions answered. Does anybody have any questions they would like answered today? Okay.
For the register demands, are we speaking of, or?
Both the
Together?
register of demands and the approval of minutes, either one of those.
Okay. no. I do have a couple questions here for the register of demands. I seen where they were going to give anybody a jacket that are promotions, a MSWD jacket for $69, $70, might as well round that one off. It's my understanding that if the board of directors have a jacket that says MSWD on it, or a shirt, that we can only use those when we're out somewhere together. So when would Desert Promotions be wearing this jacket representing us?
You can wear those anytime you want to.
Anytime you want.
Anytime you want to wear them. Sure.
I don't have one, so I wouldn't.
I'll make sure you
Well, make sure you get one. Okay, well, that answers that question, and this is kind of a thank you thing to Desert Promotions, and that's fine too. Very quickly here, our landscaping, urban habitat. Yeah, monthly landscaping. What is he really doing for that amount of money? $6,663 a month?
He's all of our well sites,
Yep.
all of the property that we own, including this building and next door. They maintain all of that. We go out on an RFP on that on a yearly basis.
And when is this RFP up?
It would be at the end of this fiscal year.
We'll go out and
Can we, I went around and looked at some of this. And as you know, environmental horticulture, so I understand what I'm looking at. And I really can't justify this kind of money every month being spent. Especially when you pull into the Horton treatment plant and there's plants dying there. They're also in the manager's report. Apparently, there's been some question as to what they have been doing. I forgot what page that is. I can look it up and bring that again. Unless you want me to look it up now. There was, well, that gets far back in here. But anyways, there was some question on their, I forgot what page it was. Anyhow, we can find that out between now and then. So I believe we can get it done cheaper through another company that we see here in town because all their equipment's already here. When they have a little downtime, they can send one of their people over to take a look. They're driving by where all these places are doing other landscaping projects for the city. So I think we need to really take a close look at what we're paying for on this.
We bid this project.
I'm sure it's okay.
If you have someone in mind,
not
you can
getting-
Let us know.
you can share that information with us and we'll make sure that they are notified of when this gets on,
Right.
when we release this, and then they can bid on that as well.
Well, for now, we need to take care of those plants that are dying on front of the Horton treatment plant. And that's something that our staff drives by it every day. And I know I've been over there and I didn't really notice it until I really took a look the other day when I drove over there to take a look. So like I say, there's not that much landscaping being done on all these different well sites. $6,000 a month. I wish I got the contract.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I
We have
noticed they were,
35 or 34 sites. If they have, and 36,
Page 159 of the paragraph.
is that what I was?
36 sites.
36 sites, yeah. So, yeah, there's 36 sites, but what's really going on? They're oleanders. So they're trimming the oleanders once a month or they're checking the irrigation. Even though there's 36 sites, you can do that in one day. If that's, I don't know. It seems like a lot, 36 sites, but there's no foliage there really. I mean, what are we really doing? I think Danny might want to say something.
No, at this point, it's just trash removal, dust, cleaning things up, trimming. It's a variety of different things. Not to be disrespectful, but we've tried to go around all of these sites in one day. It's just with the board tours and things of that nature. And I think we've got to maybe 6 or 7 if we stop and actually look at them. So getting to 36 is just not a one-day effort. Just from us driving
you have to
around.
have quite a crew to do that.
Well,
But we'll definitely look into it and see what pricing comes in, but
We can do. Yeah.
I noticed they got some weeds taken care of next door.
We are very fussy.
Staff got onto them about that one.
We are very fussy. We
Yeah.
try.
And they were raking around the area out there where the little cactus garden is.
Maybe they could include checking out my house and getting rid of the weeds that I've got growing in my house.
Yeah, everybody's.
Because of the rain. Hey,
Yeah,
I got some too.
what I'm saying is it just seems like an awful lot, even if it took 2 days. Divide that by 15 of them and what, yeah. It just seems like an awful lot and they're not doing their job. So,
okay.
as far as I'm concerned, they're not doing their job. When I see plants dying, then the landscaper isn't doing his
Well,
job.
thank you. And we'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all for now.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
President Martin, I
Yes.
just wanted to point out, I think the consent calendar also includes 17 and 18. Am I right?
Yes, it does. And I was going to bring that up, but when I didn't know we.
I'm sorry. Yes, it does. Thank you for pointing that out. Item 17, compensation for Directors Meyerhoffen and Duff to attend a meeting with Mission Springs Water District Legal Counsel regarding MSWD versus DWA litigation history and status. Date to be determined upon approval. This is required in order to get compensation has to be done before a presentation, attending a presentation. And I guess from what I understand, there have been some new developments on the.
Well, I was going to report today that we filed our appellate brief in the Mission Springs versus DWA litigation on Friday. And so that's the update on that. But the idea behind these meetings was to we have two recently added board members, and they don't have the benefit of having been in all the closed sessions that we've had in the past years and understanding the history of litigation, how we got where we're at, what the legal arguments are by both sides, and what the status is. And so just to put them on a level playing field, the idea was to, and it's a lengthy meeting to go through the whole history of it. So pulling the whole board into a closed session to do it didn't seem like an efficient way to do it. So
Okay.
that was the idea behind it.
Good idea. Good idea.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Director Duff, did you already go to them? So then I believe there's going to be somebody's going to need to make a motion that Director Duff, because it's not in the agenda. And my next question before you answer the first one, will Director Duff and I be able to vote on it since we were the ones getting compensated for it, or should we?
Yes, you will. I don't know that there's likely to be anything to vote on at this point. There's an appeal pending. We filed our brief. I believe DWA files theirs in late June. I think that's when their brief
I
is.
think he was talking about the motion to compensate him.
Oh,
Yes. That's
okay. I misunderstood
to,
the
yes.
question. Yes, for reimbursement, you can vote on that.
Okay, thank you.
That's one of the
We'll
exceptions.
do that on Monday.
Yes. And as soon as you want to make that appointment, please let me
Okay.
know.
Yes, sir.
And 18 is the one that we gave you the staff.
We haven't got there yet.
Yeah.
The second part of the compensation is for all directors to attend the CWEA Awards Luncheon in San Diego on Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. Discussion also included overnight hotel accommodations. This is a state award that the Mission Springs Water District is receiving. Do you have any additional details that you can?
Danny, did you want to elaborate on that? It's for our plant. We're talking about the Corbs Award. Go on.
This is actually this CWEA, and this is just to attend award ceremony. And we are up for two different awards. One is Plant of the Year as well as Outreach of the Year statewide. So right now it is just to attend the event.
Okay. All right. And we will also be voting on that on Monday as well. Are there any questions today? Yeah, go ahead.
Just a statement, actually. I did find my meeting with our council very, very helpful and very informative. And irregardless of how the board votes, I hope that Director Meyerhoffen gets that opportunity. It was worth it. The other comment I wanted to make is that we do not need to make this retroactive. I'm happy to have spent that time. So if it speeds things along in allowing Director Meyerhoffen and future directors to be compensated for legal briefings, especially when they are new, I am on board with that, but we don't need to look back.
Okay.
And just on that point, I appreciate those comments. Under the water code, the board has to approve compensation in advance. And so my plan was to meet with Director Hoff just to update her on the appellate brief and go through that with her. And then she would be compensated for that. But if I can just provide it to you and then you can call with any questions you have. But normally, and under the code, the compensated meetings have to be approved in advance. Otherwise, you would have public agencies, water districts where board members go to some event that wasn't authorized and then they want to get reimbursed for it. And so that's why the code requires advance approval.
Sure. Okay. Yes, Ted.
I seem to got to 18 here, 19, but can't find it. But I think I was reading something about the hotel stay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm all for that. I know it's a long trip down there. And I think that if the directors want to take a spouse down there with them, that we should go ahead and let that be known up front. I see no problem with that. After all, it's just a way we can say thank you to everybody's wives and husbands and it's not going to cost that much more for.
Well,
the state.
if there is any additional cost, that's going to be the director is going to have to cover that.
Yeah, the meals and that kind of thing. I'm talking about the hotel stay.
Same thing.
So just so it's out in the open,
Sure.
so we don't hear, I've heard rumors in the past about some trips that have been made.
Yeah,
So just so this is all out in the open, I would like to, come Monday to
Okay.
clarify that that's going to happen. Thank you.
super. Ivan? Robert, any questions or comments on San Diego tenants?
At this time, no?
Okay, all right, super. All right, and again, we will be voting on those two items on Monday.
President
Item
Martin,
8, I'm sorry, what?
President Martin, Russell Betts has his hand up. I'm not sure if he wants to speak on this item.
Okay,
Hi, thanks for taking my question. It wasn't actually on this item. I was just curious. I have a question for public comment. Is there a time at the end of the meeting or can I ask now?
he already,
Can you hear me?
oh, I already did it. Okay, all right. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm just curious, will we be able to attend in person at the Monday meeting or will it be by Zoom again?
You can do it both ways. We're open to the public.
Yeah.
You can do it both ways. You want to come to the meeting or not?
I just wanted to know if it was open, we can come down there. It's a lot easier to do it by phone if we wanted to sit down there. So that's all I was asking. And thanks for indulging me the question.
Yeah, I'm getting somebody has an open mic with additional information coming forward. So when were we planning on allowing the public to attend our meetings in person?
Right now.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councilman Betts?
It sure does. Thank you very much. You have a
Okay.
nice day.
You too. All right, item 18, you all were given a insert here. Does everybody have a copy of it? Ted, you've got a copy?
Yes, sir. I
All
got the
right.
copy.
Acceptance of the emergency sewer repairs on First Street, Fourth Street, Sixth Street, and Seventh Street project. Pardon?
This is really, you've seen this before. You approved this work. All we're really doing by this, which is why it's on this consent agenda, is that this is really just, we've determined that the project is complete and we are proposing that you issue a notice of completion and give them the retention.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Amber?
Thank you. I'm assuming that they provide us something that states that all of their subcontractors have been paid in full and that there's no debts that we potentially are liable for after giving the final payment.
Yeah, we wouldn't bring it to you unless.
Absolutely.
Just have to ask. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's it? Okay. Robert, any questions or comments?
Well, seeing as I don't have the paper, I think I'll have to hold off till Monday.
That might be a good idea. Ted, any
No.
comments? Ivan? Okay, thank you. Item 19. Director's reports. Does anybody want to do theirs today or would they rather do it on Monday? 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 Robert, Monday? Okay, Monday. All right. General Manager's report, item 20. Included in this report are the following oral reports, the financial report, public affairs report, and customer service report, which will be handled on Monday. We just had the audit. Is there anything on the financial report that we need to cover in addition to what was presented today?
Well, yeah, it'll be a different report. Arturo, did you want to do that on Monday or?
I can do that today. It'll be pretty brief. Thank
Yeah,
you, General Manager Wallum and
Okay.
President Martin.
ahead.
Just going over our current financials for February 28th, 2023. You can see we're still trending up in terms of revenue, trending down in expenses compared to the budget. In overall net income of $5.5 million for the district. We did have several collections in property taxes in February. A few of which included the payments to the city for utility tax. You also, I think you saw that in the register of demands, roughly $190,000 that we're passing on to the city. Currently, our investment return is going up, as you've seen with some banks. And also our cash on hand is going down based on the payments that we've been making for the construction of the regional plant. And that's all I have to present today. If there's any questions, I'll gladly answer them.
I'm not used to financial reports being so brief. Thank you so much. Amber, you have any questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you very much, President Martin. Thank you, Mr. Ceja, for the presentation. I do have just a quick question. I'm not seeing on here, or where would I look on here to see the interest income being made on the money that we recently received from Wells Fargo for the interim loan?
Yes, I can forward that to you. In fact, if you prefer, I can separate it in this report going forward. Would that be helpful?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And have we checked to make sure that that income is not going to be subject to arbitrage when we're done?
Yes, I'm keeping very close eye on that. In fact, one of the things you'll see next month is we're moving some of that money to our investment account because it is lower in the interest rate than we're paying on the loan. For that reason, to avoid any of those issues. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. Ted?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Ivan? Robert? Okay.
Thank you.
Public affairs report.
I mean, we can do that on Monday if
Monday.
you would like.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Can you do that on Monday, Marion?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
There is one thing, and of course the other one is on Monday, but there's just one real short thing that I wanted to say that Steve reported when we were doing our engineering. Steve and I were in our engineering meeting on Wednesday, and that is the good news is that we have just recently been informed that we have been approved to repurpose a Prop 1 Round 1 monies, and we're going to combine them with the Prop 1 Round 2 monies, which gives us a total of about $950,000 in grant money, which will help us finish the D3 area.
Okay, good.
And I didn't know, Steve, if you had anything more you wanted to add to that, but it's that finally is coming to fruition. So that's about all. And the rest is in our other report.
And item 21, we have some thank you notes in the correspondence. Item 22, district council comments.
Yes, just briefly, as I mentioned a moment ago, we just recently completed the brief in the Mission Springs versus Desert Water Agency case. We filed that. And then also, as we discussed earlier, I think it was on February 9th with Board Member Duff, just to give her an update and give her the background on the case. And in addition to working on that, we've assisted the district on Brown Act matters, labor and employment matters, including revisions and updates to the district's personnel rules and regulations that you heard a report on today. And then we provided a litigation status report to our auditors. That's one of the things that we do twice a year. We do it when they initiate the audit. We advise them of any liabilities, risks, et cetera, to the district, and then we update it again before they finalize the audit. And so that's something that we worked on recently. And then also assisting the district with contract matters. And that's my report.
Okay. Director's comments. Robert, I'll let you go first.
I'll save most of mine for Monday, but I just have one. It's really a comment and a question. And so President Martin, you mentioned after the presentation regarding the Wright Regional Plan and the tour that it was like watching the pyramids being built again. And so I have to say, I wasn't aware. I knew you were old. I didn't know you were that old, but I wanted to know, do you have a picture of you at the groundbreaking of the pyramids?
As a matter of fact, I do. It's in hieroglyphics, but that's oh god.
That's all I got.
Okay, sir.
Can I go?
Yes, go ahead.
Director Griffith stole my my comments. I was going to mention that I hope your father gets well soon, because I know you had a good one-liner for when President Martin mentioned being at the to see the pyramids being built. So best wishes to your father, and look forward to you being back here in person.
Oh, you guys, you got to remember the old saying, paybacks I won't even finish that, but
Well, Director Martin, I was just wondering if you were there as a farmer when the Nile River flowed up to where
as
the
a matter of
pyramid
fact,
and
I was
came back into the Nile River and they had that good farmland.
with a fishing pole too. At the same.
Yeah.
And I have nothing further today. I didn't skip you, did I? Did I skip you? No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was so glad that Director Griffith made it online because I would have missed him jabbing you
Oh, yeah.
and protecting me over here. So
Yes, yes.
thank you. I'll save the rest of my comments for Monday.
You can blame him for the whole thing.
Okay. With that, if there's nothing further, meeting is adjourned.